Gloucester County Virginia Encounters in History is proudly sponsored by EVB, Community Banking since 1910. This film was funded by a grant from the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities. Additional support was provided by Gloucester County Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. Gloucester County was the site of two historic encounters, events separated by 174 years, that serve as bookends for our colonial history. One encounter marked the very beginning, and the other the very end of British rule in America. The first historic encounter took place in November of 1607, just 7 months after the British had established their first permanent settlement at nearby Jamestown. The second historic encounter took place in 1781 during the Revolutionary War. Between these encounters, separated by 174 years, Gloucester experienced a golden age as the most important county in colonial America, only to see that preeminence diminish during the years leading up to the Revolution.
The one easy way is to start at the end. In my belief, Gloucester County is definitely one of the wealthiest counties in Virginia at the end of the 17th century.
Although Gloucester County wasn't chartered or settled until more than 40 years after the founding of Jamestown, thereafter it grew quickly and became the most populous of the 25 counties in the colony.
I often like to bracket the golden age of Gloucester County into that period from 1675, when it first comes on the stage as really having the largest population of any county in the colony, all the way up through 1725.
Gloucester's golden age was founded on the production of tobacco, which generated vast wealth. As a result, Gloucester became home to many large plantations, including one of the colony's largest, Rosewell.
Indeed, I should be much happier were I nearer to Rosewell. I reflect often with pleasure on the philosophical evenings I passed at Rosewell on my last visits there. Thomas Jefferson, February 21st, 1770.
Did Thomas Jefferson write parts of the Declaration of Independence at Rosewell? History has no definitive answer, but we do know that Jefferson often visited the colonial plantation, home of his close friend John Page. Rosewell Plantation, first patented in 1639 by George Menifee, comprised thousands of acres on the north side of the York River in what would become Gloucester County in 1651. In 1607, the founding of Gloucester County and Gloucester County's golden age lay far into the future, but Gloucester's first encounter with history was about to unfold. At the end of the 16th century, England has an estimated population of 4 million, but is facing larger and more powerful enemies and competitors on the European continent. London is a city of 200,000 and an important seaport, but it's overrun by unemployed soldiers and beggars. Crime is rampant. Well aware of the riches claimed by Spanish explorers and conquistadors, the French and the Dutch, as well as the English, escalate their attempts to build their own empires in the Americas. King James is persuaded to charter 2 private companies, which will raise capital from investors, known as adventurers, to finance the settling of Virginia, England's land claim in America. In 1606, the Southern, or London, Virginia Company was chartered to dig, mine, and search for all manner of mines of gold, silver, and copper. In addition, the company shall hereafter tend to the glory of His Divine Majesty in the propagating of the Christian religion. Finally, the company was intended as a way to remove the swelling population of the unemployed and criminals from the city of London. Those who are to be sent to America under the seal of the London Virginia Company are to be called planters. The London Company was granted a claim by the king to all of North America lying between 35 and 41 degrees north latitude. This grant was known as the First Charter. Virginia was bounded to the south by Spanish Florida. To the north, the colony was bordered by the king's grant to the Plymouth Company, as well as French Nova Scotia. The London Company's claim encompassed more than 500 miles of the coast, from Cape Fear, North Carolina, to the eastern tip of Long Island.
Hey!
Given the extent of this grant, it's ironic that the English newcomers unknowingly settled right in the middle of the largest and most powerful Indian nation on America's eastern seaboard. The 105 English settlers landed on an island in the James River, some 40 miles upstream from the Chesapeake Bay. Here the explorers founded their capital, which they named Jamestown, not realizing that it was less than 20 miles from Werowocomoco, the capital of the 15,000-strong Powhatan nation.
Jamestown Island and the influx of the English was the end of our way of lifestyle.
When you think about Virginia history, and you think about it during the time of Jamestown, when you think about Virginia history in 1607, there are three major figures that come to mind. There's John Smith, there's Chief Powhatan, and there's Pocahontas.
John Smith, at the age of 27, was a professional soldier and adventurer when he arrived in Jamestown in 1607. In September of 1608, he became the president of the Jamestown Ruling Council. Powhatan was the preeminent chief of the Powhatan Indian nation. Powhatan is a personage, a tall, well-proportioned man, with a sour look, his head somewhat grey, his beard so thin it seems none at all, his age near 60, of a very able and hardy body to endure labour. John Smith.
When the English came here, they expected to find ignorant, unorganized people that they could push around. And when they got here, they found someone of Powhatan's power and stature and organization, and they realized that it wasn't going to be as easy as they thought it was.
Pocahontas is the daughter of Chief Powhatan. At the time Jamestown is settled, Pocahontas is between 10 and 14 years of age. Her given name is Amanuta, and she has a secret name, Matoaka. Pocahontas was a nickname, which meant high-spirited or mischievous.
Some people believe that she was a traitor because at least once she warned the English that the Indians were going to attack, at least once. Others feel that she was a great negotiator, spokesperson for the Indians of Virginia at that time.
I know you've heard about Werowocomoco. Some of the recent digs down there have unearthed artifacts that date back to AD 600. So 1,000 years before Jamestown, Werowocomoco was thriving and was well.
By December of 1607, Jamestown was running out of food. Smith set off for Werowocomoco to meet Powhatan and trade for corn. He was accompanied by 3 soldiers and 6 oarsmen. They traveled up the Chickahominy River, but it grew too narrow. Smith bartered for a canoe and continued on with 2 companions and 2 Indian guides. They encounter an Indian hunting party led by Powhatan's younger brother, Opechancanough. The Indians kill Smith's companions. Smith is taken captive. Opechancanough takes the captive Smith on a journey to visit several Indian villages where he is put on display. Finally, in late December 1607, he is taken to an impressive bluff on the York River, the site of Powhatan's capital, Werowocomoco.
Werowocomoco was located in Gloucester County. Pocahontas and Chief Powhatan lived at Werowocomoco. And the interactions they had with Captain John Smith at Werowocomoco form part of the heritage, part of the mythology, part of the lore, as well as part of the fact that makes up Virginia history, and that is taught to almost every school child in the United States.
This engraving of Pocahontas saving Smith is taken from Smith's map. Future depictions would greatly romanticize the event, which historians believe may have been an elaborate initiation rite rather than an aborted execution. John Smith visited Werowocomoco and Powhatan again in the fall of 1608, accompanied by Captain Christopher Newport. They present a copper crown and red robe to Powhatan, gifts from the English king. In October of 1609, due to an injury, Smith returned to England, never to return to Werowocomoco. About the same time, Powhatan abandoned Werowocomoco and moved his capital to a safer location, further from the English at Jamestown. Pocahontas left Werowocomoco, possibly married, and went to live with the Potomac Indians, Powhatan's northernmost subjects.
But I feel a spiritual connectedness to the history that went on there. We talk a lot about preserving our heritage for the next 7 generations. When I go there, I feel I'm standing on the shoulders of the 7 generations that immediately preceded me. I feel good about Werowocomoco. I believe it's Powhatan's town.
While gold was not to be the source of wealth for England's American colony, these golden leaves were. In 1611, John Rolfe brought hybrid tobacco seeds to Virginia. By 1613, the first shipment of tobacco was ready to be sent home. In the spring of 1613, Captain Samuel Argall, while trading with the Potomacs, learned that Pocahontas was in their village. He persuaded the local Werowance, or chief, Yapasis, to assist in kidnapping her. Held hostage, Pocahontas was schooled in English and Christianity.
Pocahontas renounced her country idolatry, confessed the faith of Jesus Christ, and was baptized. Reverend Alexander Whitaker.
On April 4th, 1614, in the same week she was baptized Rebecca, Pocahontas married John Rolfe. Their union spawned the Peace of Pocahontas, which lasted until 1622. In the spring of 1616, Master Rolfe, Rebecca, and their infant son Thomas sailed for England at the invitation of the Virginia Company in order to promote the colony and Virginia tobacco. After attending the court of King James, Pocahontas took sick. As they were embarking for home, Pocahontas died on the 21st of March, 1617. She was buried at Gravesend, England, near the mouth of the Thames River. The following year in Virginia, her father, Powhatan, died. In 1617, 20,000 pounds of tobacco were shipped to England. In 1618, in order to promote increased tobacco production, the Virginia Company adopted a policy that made private ownership of land in the colony possible, under a system of what were known as head rights.
Head rights are 50 acres of land for every person that comes over, or whoever pays for their transportation. So if I'm a wealthy gentleman, I might bring over my family, my wife and my 3 children. That alone gets me 4 head rights, or 200 acres of land. Put on top of that maybe 2 or 3 tenant farmers who are already going to owe me 7 years of labor each, and I get at least another 150 acres worth of land for them. So I've built myself up a pretty substantial plantation.
In 1619, 40,000 pounds of tobacco were shipped, and in that year the first African slaves were brought to the colony. By 1629, 1.5 million pounds of Virginia tobacco were exported to England. In February of 1632, Virginia's Executive Council ordered construction of a tobacco warehouse at Gloucester Point, then known as Tyndall's Point. This is believed to have been the first permanent English presence in Gloucester County. The location of the warehouse has been lost to history. Tobacco wealth stimulated growth and demand for more and more land. The best tobacco land lay along the rivers and bays and continued to be settled by those looking to make their fortune in the Virginia colony. The pressure of settlement provokes a major coordinated Indian attack in 1644. The attack was led by the aged Opie Can Canoe.
Sad commentary to me is that when I came out of grade school, I didn't feel good about being a Native American. When I read the history books, it painted my people as villains, as savages, as heathens, and I believed it. And then later on, I began to understand that people will do what's necessary to protect their homes and families, and we were protecting our homelands.
The result of the attacks is the Treaty of 1646. Although there was no fighting reported in Gloucester County, the treaty called for settlers there to give up their lands and move back south of the York River. The treaty was violated almost immediately and was formally revoked in 1649.
There's no ribbon-cutting ceremony. There's no parade across. There's no emulated battle or anything. It's simply the patent office allows individuals to start patenting land north of the York River again. At the time, there seems to be very little evidence of Virginia Indians living at least in the lower portions of the county.
The first patent in what was to become Gloucester County was awarded in 1635 to Hugh Gwynn for 1,000 acres of land on Gwynn's Island. Gwynn's Island and nearby mainland areas were later partitioned to form Matthews County.
Gloucester had their records burned twice, both in 1821 at a fire at the clerk's office that was by arson, as well as in 1865 when Richmond burned as the Union Army was entering.
As a result of the fires, the charter creating Gloucester County was destroyed. The earliest recorded mention of the county still in existence is a deed from 1651. That year is accepted as the year the county was formed from a portion of the original York County.
It was inevitable that our lifestyle was going to come to an end. The best that we can do is try to remain a hold of what we have left. Because my dialect of the Algonquin language is lost.
As the settlement expanded, the English, by whatever means, took over more and more land formerly occupied by the Indians. This included purchasing Indian lands. The last recorded sale of Indian lands in Gloucester County is a deed dated October the 29th, 1655.
This day Wassatican has freely given unto Mr. Edward Wyatt all Piankitank Chiskiak land, being freely given with all the consent of all the rest of the Indians. Deed Book, 1655.
By the census of October 1669, only 15 Indians resided in the county.
By that time, the majority of the land in Gloucester had been patented, and the majority of it had been settled. There are very few people who are still speculators. They're either living in the county or have sold the county land that they own to other individuals and have moved on to speculate in other areas, to go further along the frontier, because at this time, Gloucester is completely enveloped by expansion to the north, to the northern neck, and even to the eastern shore, to the point where it is no longer the frontier by the end of the 17th century.
By the late 1700s, Gloucester no longer played a central role in the colonies. Its importance had diminished as America continued to expand and grow. But it was here, in 1781, the British Army encountered a combined American and French force in what would be the decisive battle of the Revolutionary War. Although forever known as the Battle of Yorktown, fighting actually occurred on both sides of the York River, in Yorktown and in Gloucester. On October 3rd, Gloucester was the site of the engagement known as the Battle of the Hook, probably the largest cavalry engagement of the war. French forces under the Duc de Loudun, along with Lieutenant Colonel John Mercer's select battalion of the Virginia militia, engaged and defeated British Lieutenant Colonel Bannister Tarleton's dragoons and attached infantry of the 23rd Regiment Royal Welsh Fusiliers. Shortly after the battle, the Allied commander in Gloucester sent a report of victory to General Washington in Yorktown.
We have met with the enemy, who was in number about 500 men, cavalry and infantry. The 200 men Grenadier Americans have behaved exceedingly well. 'Tis a general report that Tarleton has been wounded. Brigadier General the Marquis de Choisy, 3rd October 1781.
Overcome by a superior force, British General Lord Cornwallis was forced to surrender. The Articles of Capitulation called for the British garrisons of York and Gloucester to surrender themselves prisoners of war to the combined forces of America and France. On October 19th, at 2 p.m., the British forces in Yorktown marched out in surrender. Across the York River, the British forces at Gloucester marched out an hour later at 3 p.m. This final surrender was the last gasp of British dominion over the American colonies. Roswell was consumed by fire in 1916. Today, all that remains are its impressive ruins, a reminder of the time when Gloucester was at the very center of the American experiment.
And so I really see Gloucester County as being kind of indicative of the Virginia tradition. of the Virginia characters and qualities that we often describe ourselves with, of the kind of mostly rural communities that developed as a down-home characteristic, this kind of industriousness in agriculture, but at the same time that diversified outlook where you do have mercantilism, you do have trade, you do have politics, you have wealth, and you have hard work, all of that building together into the character that we all, I guess, aspire to today.
Through its historic encounters, Gloucester County was witness to the very beginning and the very end of British rule in America.